everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. So today, Alex and I want to talk about self-care. And it's interesting because I want to start off by talking about the myth of self-care. We wanted to talk to you about some misunderstandings. We throw around the word a lot. We see hashtag self-care on Instagram a lot. And what does it mean? So like when you are on the internet and you see people hashtag self-care, you're seeing bubble baths, candles, all this luxurious stuff and stuff that feels good, personal relaxation. And that's definitely a part of self-care. It's a part of self-care that's important. It's a part of self-care that we both partake in. But it's kind of an incomplete picture. So today we kind of wanted to flesh out for you different kinds of self-care. And before we do that, I just wanted to make a little bit of a plug because sometimes self-care can be boring and uncomfortable and unfamiliar because self-care is really anything that you do to take care of yourself. And so sometimes that might feel strange, unfamiliar, uncomfortable, totally boring, not Instagram worthy. And if you're out there and you're practicing that kind of self-care, I just want to give a shout out because it's not easy and it's, I just want to recognize you for that effort. So let's dive in and talk about some different kinds of self-care that we might not see.
Yes. And I will start us off with physical self-care. So I think we all know that taking care of our bodies is a really large component of our self-care, but that doesn't have to just be having this really crazy exercise routine. It's more than that. The key to this kind of self-care is it should be something that you enjoy. It should be something that is doing something for your body, but isn't something that feels like this big obligation. So that could be a few things or a lot of things, really. It can be yoga. It could be going on more walks, or maybe when you're walking your dog, you go an extra block, or you just go walk your dog at all. I mean, things like that are self-care. And it can be also things that aren't anything to do with physical activity. Eating more vegetables, going to sleep earlier, things like that are things that you can do physically to care for yourself.
I love it. I'm going to jump into emotional self-care. Emotional self-care is about being in tune with your emotions. It's about checking in with yourself, being mindful of your triggers, which we've talked a little bit about, and finding ways to work with them rather than against them. So some examples of this, and we have mentioned this in other videos, maybe unfollowing accounts on social media that trigger you or make you feel angry, upset, insecure. Journaling, which we've mentioned in every video, but for real, guys, it's a game changer. Such a great way to kind of gain some insight and process. And that's really, really good emotional self-care. Some other ideas are being creative, working on changing your negative self-talk. That's a big one. That's difficult. And also setting boundaries. So these are examples, and it can be so many things. And again, this is not something you're going to see on hashtag self-care on Instagram because it's just not as like photo worthy, but it's all really important parts of self-care.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's such a good point, is that there's so much more self-care than just what you're seeing on social media. Self-care isn't always pretty. A lot of the times it's not pretty.
No.
It's not fun. And, and it's important to have like a balance between like, maybe having a nice bath every once in a while with bubbles and music playing. Yeah, maybe that's sometimes the self-care you need, but most of the time it's other stuff that probably doesn't sound so fun. So I think it's good that we're touching on that, which I really like. And then I want to talk about spiritual self-care. This one is the most new to me. So spiritual self-care doesn't need to be focused on religion. It doesn't need to relate to religion at all. For some, it will. And for some, it really won't. So when you're practicing spiritual self-care, you are caring and nourishing for your soul and you're basically trying to get inner peace. And that can look different way. That can look a lot of different ways. So for some, it might be spending some time out in nature. Maybe you take off your shoes and you just like ground yourself, or you really put your bare feet in the ground. Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just lay out in the grass and just look up at the sky, or you meditate, or maybe you help out at a local charity.
I love that. And yeah, it looks so different for everyone. And I think hearing the word spiritual, our mind goes to this place, but I really resonated with when you were talking about nature. Like, that's my spiritual self-care, even though it has nothing to do with religion or, you know what I mean? So I really appreciated those examples. That's a good one. The next one is intellectual self-care. So this sounds funny, and I know that everyone is in school. Well, not everyone. A lot of people are in school, and so they might feel sort of exhausted by pursuing your intellect. But intellectual self-care is important because you're doing something that you enjoy learning about and that nourishes and challenges your mind. And that's not always the stuff we learn in school. Often it's the stuff that you're excited about outside of school. Yeah. So it can involve figuring out what you are interested about. What topics do you like learning about? And developing your skills and interests. What topics do you love going down a YouTube rabbit hole on? You know, what really gets you in that flow state? What documentaries do you like to watch? That kind of stuff. So some other ideas are reading a book, completing a puzzle, learning a new language, taking a course on something that interests you, or watching a documentary or YouTube on a topic you're interested in. So again, this can look different for everybody, and it's cool because you can try out, you know, with the internet, there's so many different topics out there. So go lose yourself in that.
Yes. And I think this one especially is one that I think that you and I can really support anyone that's watching this with. If you are needing some sort of support in what am I interested in, or what do I want to learn more about, like, we can kind of help with that. We can maybe try some stuff out with you, suggest some things, just we can really have a conversation going. So if that's something that you could use help with, talk to someone on your treatment team, because we can definitely support with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then another one is social self-care. So by nature, humans are social, but it looks different for everyone. So some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, and because our level of comfort in social situations differs, so does what this self-care might look like for you. But some sort of connection is important for all of us. Even if the idea of connection just doesn't sound like something you want to do. We've all been there.
Totally.
We've all been there. But I know for me, when I'm feeling maybe antisocial, or I'm feeling like I don't really want to talk to anyone, almost always, not every single time, but almost always, if I do push myself to have some sort of social interaction, even if it's not the biggest social interaction ever, I feel better after. Where it seems like, that just sounds like it sounds hard. And some days it will be hard, but if you can push through, you can really grow in that area for sure. And then some other ideas are maybe reconnecting with an old friend, striking up conversation with someone, maybe at a coffee shop, or like at the grocery store. Obviously, safe distance right now, but just practicing that stuff. Maybe you usually use the self-checkout line when you're at the grocery store. I know I do. I like
Mhm.
using the self-checkout line, but I
Yeah.
know on certain days when I'm feeling a little bit more to myself, maybe I'll go and use a regular checkout line. So I have to at least have some sort of
Mhm.
interaction with the cashier that's checking me out. That's just something that I know I really try to push myself with.
Yeah, I love that. And even just sitting kind of maybe in a downtown or a public
Yes.
area safely and just
Mhm.
kind of being around people and watching the world go by, if that's this kind of baby step that you feel comfortable taking on some days, that's all the social interaction that I can do. And there's so many creative ways. Again, come to us if
Yeah.
you want help brainstorming. So our last one is sensory self-care. And this is all about nourishing your senses. And why this is important is because it brings us back to the present moment. So, you've heard us talk about this before. We've talked about grounding skills, way to stay in our body, ways to stay present, because it lowers our stress level. And it's an important part of self care. So, here are some examples. Maybe burning your favorite scented candle, um, spending time in nature and really using your senses to take it in. What do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? Listening to soothing music. And then Alex mentioned this before, but walking barefoot outside, walking in the grass, walking on the earth. So, really incorporating your five senses and what feels good, I think is a really interesting part of self care.
Yes. And I think you already mentioned this, but it really paying attention to your senses helps ground you and helps kind of
Mhm.
bring you back to it. I know for me, I have a body wash, a lavender one that every single time I'm getting out of the shower, like right before I'm done, I put a little bit in my hand and rub it and like just like breathe it in for a little bit. And that's just kind of my daily little self-care that I do for that category. So finding little things like that, they don't need to take up a lot of time either. But certain ones will become maybe part of your routine and you won't even really realize that they are self-care. One thing that it really stuck with me, someone once told me that on days where self-care seems really hard, think of yourself as a young child who had a really hard day. When a young child has had a really hard day, you make sure that they have been fed. You make sure that they're clean. You make sure that they've gotten enough sleep. You make sure that they're comfortable. Make sure they're in comfortable clothes.
Mhm.
Um, just make sure they have a nice fuzzy blanket, like little things like that. If you're feeling like, I don't know where to start, or you're feeling really down, I think that's a really simple, kind of basic way to look at it. Treat yourself like a young child and really care for yourself how you would care for a young child. So hopefully this kind of gives you a new outlook on self-care, and I don't know, I just hope it makes you realize that self-care isn't pretty all the time, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And that's sometimes, or most of the time, I'd say the most beneficial self-care is the stuff that
totally.
isn't Instagram worthy.
Totally.
And again, reach out to us or to your team members if this is something you could use help with, because like I said, these are things that I'm still working on, and I'm sure Lauren's still working. We're all working on them in some aspect. So we would love to support with that. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.